Douglas County, Nebraska, for Tuesday, April 14th, 2026. Please note that a copy of the Open Meetings Act is located on the north wall of the Legislative Chamber alongside an automatic external defibrillator. Please stand for the pledge. First order of business is the Douglas County Board of Equalization. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Borgeson. Commissioner Kavanaugh. Commissioner Fahey. Commissioner Friend. Commissioner Morgan. Commissioner Rogers. Mr. Chair.
Here. First, we have items A and B. A being the approval of the minutes of the Board of Equalization meeting held Tuesday, March 31st, 2026, and B being a call for a meeting and set Tuesday, April 21st, 2026, as date for a hearing on certified assessment corrections reflecting the addition of omitted property to the tax rolls or increased value on property. Do you have a motion and a second for both? Second. Motion by Rogers, second by Morgan. Please vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Next, we have resolution C and D, which we can take in block plus adjournment if desired. Motion to approve C and D plus adjournment by Rogers, second by Morgan. Did anybody want to comment on C or D? Seeing none, let's vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. That concludes equalization. We'll now go into Board of Commissioners. Roll call.
Commissioner Borgeson. Commissioner Kavanaugh. Commissioner Fahey. Commissioner Friend. Commissioner Morgan. Commissioner Rogers. Mr. Chair.
Here. First, we have items A and B. A being the approval of the minutes of the Board of Commissioners meeting held Tuesday, March 31st, 2026, and B being approval of claims submitted for payment process through Tuesday, April 14th, 2026. Do I have a motion and a second for both? Second. Motion to approve A and B by Rogers. Motion by Morgan. Please vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. We'll move on to our consent agenda, items A through I under section 2. Do I have a motion and a second for discussion? Second. Motion by Rogers, second by Morgan for consent agenda. Any questions or comments? We'll go to Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Thank you. For the record, on items B and C, we have two grant-funded items here. Item B, approval of agreement for grant-funded stability services for use by the home program as an alternative to detention. B, First LLC for family partner services, family support services, juvenile mental health, outpatient counseling, individual and family services. I would just like for the record to get the source of the grant and the amount of the grant. Doesn't appear in the...
Commissioner Kavanaugh, can you put your mic closer to you, please? Put your mic closer to you.
Oh, sorry. Hi.
Hi, good morning, Commissioners. Dr. Abby Carbaugh, Douglas County Juvenile Justice. These are paid for by an allocation from the Sherwood funds that were given to the county. So there's a $400,000 annual allocation for this year that was given to DCYC that's already in place. These are fee-for-service contracts that will be funded out of that pot of money.
So the amount of these two items?
So they're fee-for-service contracts. So as they get a referral from the home program, they will be paid either an hourly or daily or per session rate based on the service they're providing.
And the last few grants that we've seen have come from Sherwood. Are these a drawdown on the amount that Sherwood pledged for the construction of the kids' jail?
No, this is the separate pot that they pledged for programs and services.
So is there an amount in the grant itself? Or will it be just charged fee for services. I noticed there's like a $138 an hour fee for counseling and a $50 an hour fee for something else.
Yes, so these fee-for-services will be charged until DCYC expends their $400,000 allocation for this fiscal year, which is only a couple months left. So they have a pot of money for this year. These will just draw down on that money.
Okay, so it shows $66 per hour for services for family partner, $68 per hour for services for family support, $156 per session for mental health outpatient counseling, and $113 per addendum for juvenile substance use addendum. And that's for B. I haven't looked at the C thing. So is there a set aside, did you say? And then they draw down on that set aside from Sherwood?
Yes, so these are two new providers that we're adding. We have about 10 current providers who also have fee-for-service contracts. So this is just adding additional services that will be paid for out of this drawdown.
Okay, but have they capped the amount that they would compensate?
Not per provider, but there's a pot of $400,000 allocated for stability services.
And that would cover both of these programs?
And the other providers that we have, yes.
Okay. Maybe, when we have the monthly update on that, we can go into that a little more in depth, just to see who the providers are and where we are. I think we talked about this where corrections comes in and they show where they are in the fiscal year on programs. It would be good to know where we are on this $400,000 from the Sherwood Foundation.
Will do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions on consent agenda? If not, we'll vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. We'll move forward to section 5, recognitions and proclamations. We have item A, which I'll toss to Commissioner Rogers. All right, very good. Motion to approve the recognition for item A by Commissioner Rogers. Second by Commissioner Friend. And we can vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. We'll move forward to section 7, public hearings, of which we have 2. Under item A, we have listed David Dvorak, applicant for a text amendment update to the Douglas County zoning regulations in regard to boat and RV storage. And I think Laura's going to help us with this one, and Kent as well.
Hey, good morning,
And are we
Commissioners. Laura
opening the
Dietrich,
public
Planning and
hearing?
Zoning Coordinator.
Oh, my bad. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. We shall now open up the public hearing for this item. Go ahead, Laura.
Laura Dietrich, Planning and Zoning Coordinator. The application for the text amendment update to RV boat storage use type is to eliminate the language in there that says for the purpose of rental or sales, so that this use type can be for storage. That use type is not going away. The language for the purpose of rental or sale is actually in the automotive rental sales and use type. So we're not taking anything away. We're just clearly defining a use type. Planning Commission heard this at their March 18th meeting and recommended approval. I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Laura. Questions or comments on this item? Item A. All right, if not, we'll go ahead and conclude item A. Laura, thank you for that summary. I'll close the public hearing for item A. What is the will of the board? Motion approved by Fahey, second by Friend. We'll vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. We'll move on to item B under public hearings. This is a text amendment update to Douglas County zoning regulations in regards to construction contracting businesses. We will now open up the public hearing for item B and toss it to Kent.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kent Holm, Director of Environmental Services. We're going to handle this item just a little bit differently because there's some historical context that I want to provide. What we're doing here this morning really started back in 2021. That predated Laura's employment with the county, so I felt like it was appropriate for me to at least initiate the conversation here. Back in 2021, pursuant to complaints that we were receiving on a number of different uses in the county, we embarked upon a comprehensive review of properties in the county and identified 60 plus properties that were potentially illegal uses happening at the time. So what we did at the time was to categorize those into one was landscape businesses, one were construction businesses, and so on. So we started out in 2022-23 to look at the landscape businesses, and there were a handful of those. We went through a process identical to what we're doing right here. The Planning Commission and the board here really liked that process because it was interactive. We were able to take a draft, get input from property owners and folks in the public hearing process, and then refine that. The overall objective was to get folks into a situation where they were legal under the zoning code that would allow them to continue their particular use with some guardrails on it. And we used the special use permit process to be able to set those guardrails. That's exactly what we're doing here today. I know there's one document that I provided to you yesterday, and I wanted to just really kind of point out some of the concerns that were raised by folks in the public hearing process in these public meetings. And one was that we didn't follow the proper public meetings, the Open Meetings Act, and so on. We've been working with the county attorney's office from day one, and they have assured us that, yes, we met all of those particular items. So that was one assertion that was being made. Second assertion, and this I think had a lot to do with the timing, was that you may recall that Valley Corporation had applied to do some certain things in development just kind of along 275 north and west of Valley, and went through that process. Their applications were eventually denied by the board, and so we had delayed having comments on this particular construction text amendments because of that. The Valley Corp application stuff took a lot of time, and so we just delayed this. This has nothing to do with Valley Corp. I think there were some assertions that this process here was a workaround to try to get Valley Corp what they wanted. Has nothing to do with Valley Corp. Some of the initial comments from the public did point out that, hey, if you look at this, that's a potential workaround. We addressed that, and Laura can speak to that in a little bit. But basically, we put a provision in the text amendment that would eliminate any possibility of Valley Corp a workaround for them. So that specific language indicated that these businesses that we're trying to accommodate here would have to have been in business as of January 1st, 2026 on that particular piece of property. So that in sense eliminated any doubt about whether Valley Corp, whether this was some kind of a workaround. So, and then the other aspect that was asserted was that we were somehow not communicating with the county engineer. We send absolutely every application that we get that goes to the Planning Commission goes to the county engineer. Sometimes they comment, sometimes they don't. They didn't have any comments on what was being proposed in the text amendments. So I'm not quite sure how we got to that point, but that was an assertion. I can tell you that we have a good relationship with the county attorney, or with the county, well, we do with the county attorney too, but the county engineer, and we count on them for their review on everything. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Laura. If there are questions that come up about kind of the historical context, why we were doing things like that, Basically, we're not looking to shut folks down. We realize that if we can accommodate this in a way that makes them legal under the zoning code, that's what we want to do. So Laura's going to talk to you about the specific items that we are proposing to change to allow that to happen.
Good morning again, Laura Dietrich, Planning and Zoning Coordinator. I'm just going to run through these and show you where the changes are made in the regulations. So we created a use type for construction and contracting businesses in Article 4, which is where you'll find our use matrix and what requires a special use permit and what's permitted by right. We have clearly defined that these would be allowed on specific parcels as of January 1, 2026, if they were on that parcel and in business, they could request a special use permit. So both of these are in, the ones that we are aware of are in ag and rural residential zone districts. They have received letters from us. What we did for both of them is we addressed buffer yards, building coverage limits, storage of materials, equipment and vehicles. On this particular regulation, retail sales are not allowed on site. All of these properties are in the flood fringe, so they will have to comply with floodplain regulations as well as the zoning regulations. We added a non-conversion agreement to accessory structures, which is like an outbuilding. That's just stating that it would never be converted for a habitable structure. And also what we're finding is that people will apply for an accessory structure and then tell us it's for storage of their personal items, and then in a year or so we get a business that pops up. So we just want to be upfront about what the building is for. And then the last thing that we updated was the outdoor storage containers, that those are a temporary storage solution and not a long-term storage solution. You might think of those as shipping containers. A lot of times you'll see them in driveways for people moving and storing items. So those are the items that we addressed in this regulation update. Planning Commission heard this at multiple meetings over 2025, but we had a public hearing in January, and then they voted to recommend approval of this item at their March 18th meeting. Happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Laura and Kent. We will start discussion here. And let me go to Commissioner Borgeson.
So, thank you, guys. I do have some questions about, can't you use the word interactive? And from reading all the materials, it seems like there was maybe one time there was interaction between the public and these changes, and then the chair of our planning board did not allow public hearing or public comment. And if you follow the documents, there were some substantive changes that were made throughout these from May to November. And so I am a little concerned that those folks who came, because again, that's who we're working for, weren't allowed to make public comments on these changes that will ultimately, not ultimately, which could ultimately affect their living arrangements in the proximity of these changes going on. So I'm a little concerned about that.
Okay.
And then the second thing was, I was one of them that raised the concerns that this is a workaround to the Valley Court project. But I also have a question that there was 3 law firms that came together and proposed a different way of doing things, which if you read it, and I'm not a planning expert, but if I read it, it makes a lot of sense because it's more of a temporary, if you will, rather than a quote permanent. And I understand, as we are doing now, changes can be made along the ways. But from what I've read, there was no consideration. It was almost just kind of ignored, if you will. And I have concerns about that. And so if anything, I would appreciate if that proposal would go back and have a due diligence hearing, public hearing, so that folks can talk about that in conjunction with the changes that are being made permanently, if you will, and I put that in quotes,
Sure.
before we vote on any changes, because to me, that's a pretty good compromise, if you will, to what we are proposing.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Let me first add on the interaction part and the substantive changes aspect. Our position is that those substantive changes were all made prior to the February meeting. Now, I think there was a little bit of grammar, some things that maybe got tweaked a little bit after the February meeting, but everyone who was at the February meeting had an opportunity to speak and to address what was being proposed there. And there was no action taken at that February meeting, and we finalized any additional comments that were made, and that was put out, I think, 10 days or so in front of the March meeting. So there was opportunity for folks to respond to that at that point. Wanted to, and again, when you talk about the kind of the alternative,
I'm out of
go ahead.
time.
We're going to circle back. Don't lose that thought, Kent. Let me go to Commissioner Friend.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kent, continue with your thought process if you want to.
Sure. I wanted to address kind of the alternate proposal that was presented by the council representing the landowners. I go back to when we had the process with the landscape companies. You all really liked that process, and so we felt it was important to follow that process, to use the special use permit. Now, what is being proposed with the temporary use permit, I mean, that doesn't exist in our regulations at all. We don't have that. So that would necessitate a text amendment just to put that aspect into the regulations. From our read, we get to the same place with either process. And Commissioner Borgeson, I understand kind of the permanent special use permit, permanent piece of that. I think as we identify the special use permits for the individual properties, then we can tailor those in the very exact same way that we would with a temporary use permit as we understand them. So we're looking at this as like we're getting to the same place with either of these processes, but to go down the road of the temporary use permit process, we would have to put other things into our regulations in addition to what is there now. So that's kind of where we would stand from a planning and zoning standpoint.
Okay.
Thanks, Kent. Let me, you spoke to my anticipated question, which would, or my ensuing question, which would have been, why not implement that idea? Mm-hmm. I might have to continue, but here's the thing. I might have to turn my light on again, but here's the thing. This is Director Holm, he's right. The timing of this was really, we talked about it over coffee. It was unfortunate because when things happen and we all know this, when word circulates in our community about implementation of certain regulatory standards, it happens. Next thing you know, oh, they're trying to pull a fast one, they're trying to throw a fastball by us. I looked through these regulatory changes, and here's the thing. I only have about a minute, but there's two items here there's two key items, and Commissioner Borgeson addressed one of them. Let's talk about the legal item that we're dealing with, whether the Open Meetings Act was violated. We are not going to adjudicate that here. I don't think we have the bandwidth. And it's a civil matter. If somebody wants to sue the county, again, get in line. There's a lot of people suing the county. The fact of the matter is, I am not in position, based on all of the stuff that I've read, to say at this point that the Planning Commission violated the Open Meetings Act. We can debate it. We can talk about it for about an hour, but I don't know that we're going to come to a conclusion. Second piece is a practical, procedural related piece to the process that Environmental Services and the Planning Commission uses to push to us to say, is this the best way to approach this? All of the attorneys, and there may be some that speak to this today, are saying, no, there's an easier way. What we're saying is, we don't know that it's easier. We've done this before, and we know that that this will solve or resolve certain issues. I'll come back to it, but I have a little bit more. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Borgeson, was your light on for a second round? Or is it just on from the last round?
Not yet.
Okay. All right. If there's no cue, then Commissioner Friend, if you want a second round, go ahead.
I will. Okay, so I wasn't at the very last Planning Commission meeting for a variety of reasons, but I wouldn't say I'm well versed on this, but here's what I understand. Let's set aside the Open Meetings Act just for a second, even though we can go down that road. I don't think we're going to resolve that, like I said. The regulatory changes that are being made, I think the county attorney's office can verify this. I think Kent and Laura can both verify it. My initial problem at the very beginning is we're putting a ton of language. Everybody goes, well, it's not that much. It's about 200 words. That's a ton of language. And if you don't have a ton of definition associated with it, then you could run into problems. I don't think Kent and Laura are worried about those problems because they think that the definitions, along hopefully and probably with the county attorney's office, think those definitions are sufficient. I would say definitions are in the detail. It's not just language that's pumped into the document that comes out. It's debate among commissioners at that planning commission. It's debate among county commissioners. It's public input, the debate. Definitions are created by that debate. So anytime you have a ton of language, and I communicated, I don't want to hang him out to dry, I communicated to Spencer about this. Anytime you have a ton of language, you're going to open yourself up to that type of problem. My thing is, though, this has been done before. Kent's right. We did it with landscaping. And we said, this is the path of least resistance. Nobody created any controversy or nobody raised a fuss about it before when we did it in that manner. I remember that we did it. And there was a ton of language then, too. My concern from the beginning was that there's a bunch of language going in. I'm a little bit worried about it, but I guess I was sort of assured by the idea that A, we did do it before, and we understand how to weave our way through that type of problem. And B is those definitions are not going to be generated the way you're going to generate them at the House of Representatives or in a legislative body. You're just not. I mean, it's unruly. You get down to a micro level where we have debates, or you go out to the Planning Commission and you have debates, or the people show up late and they get up in front of a microphone. Half of it isn't even tracked. So I understand what Environmental Services are doing, and they're trying to wrap practical procedural process to this, and they're not sure that temporary use permit will allow that. I don't want to put words in their mouth, but that's my guess. My thing is right now, I'm happy to move this forward, except maybe we ought to investigate a few items, going down the road. And I think Kent and Laura would probably be open to investigating those items. That's all I'd really say about it. I think we move this forward because of historical process is consistent. I don't think we're violating that. The second thing is, the only way I would stop this if I had proof that the Open Meetings Act was fully violated, and I don't think it has. I don't have that. So I don't know, Kent. There's 30 seconds. I don't know if you want to opine on that or not, but I understand Commissioner Borgeson's point. I'm concerned too, but maybe we're taking it a bridge too far. I'm not sure. We'll let other people speak to it. So,
Thank you, Commissioner Friend.
yep, thank you.
Any other comments or questions from board or public during this public hearing?
Good morning, members of the board. My name is Danielle Dring. I am an attorney at Coley Jessen. I believe I need to provide my address. Is that correct? 1125. No?
But the county, we don't require that, just the name. So,
Okay, Danielle Dring of Coley Jessen. I wanted to thank you all for your time this morning. So I heard what. Oh, I need both of them. Okay. Is that better? Thank you. I heard what the comments were this morning from the Planning Commission members, and it's my understanding that Kent said this process started with a comprehensive review of properties in Douglas County with illegal uses in 2021, and they identified approximately 60 properties with illegal uses, and they attempted to engage in a process where they could bring those properties into a legal use, and that they engaged in an identical process with respect to these construction and contracting business properties that we're contemplating today. It is my position, as well as the position of Mr. Larry Jobin and Mr. Alex Sheener, that there were certain irregularities as well as certain violations of the Open Meetings Act. I did outline those in a letter that I sent to each of you yesterday. I do have the recordings of the January, February, and March meetings. I did not email those out. Those are quite large files. I also didn't think that it was necessary to email those out because I didn't want to necessarily inundate your email box and put another item on your to-do list, if you will. The meetings, some of them were quite long. I think the January meeting was almost 2 hours. The February meeting was approximately an hour and a half or so, and then the March meeting was not quite as long, but there were other agenda items on the March meeting that allowed it to last for about an hour. So yes, I do think that the timing of this particular issue with respect to Valley Corps' applications and then the community's response to Valley Corps, and then, you know, the subsequent residual, I guess, lingering effects of Valley Corps does make it a little bit unfortunate. I do think that the temporary use permit structure is still a very good fit with respect to the regulatory scheme that does exist within the zoning regulations for Douglas County. Douglas County has an existing non-conforming use entire section. It's Article 12 under the zoning regulations for Douglas County. I simply proposed it as a separate subsection as Article 12.05 subsection H. It would fit very well there. I think that the existing special use permit application process is not all that different from what's being proposed as the temporary use permit. The temporary use permit would just have the additional 2-year window where the owner and applicant of that property would reapply and recertify that they are still the owner of the property, or maybe it's a 5-year window. That is certainly subject to review by the Planning Commission. But the proposed regulations, not only are they kind of overkill with what currently exists, they also kind of have certain issues that could arise. For one particular example,
20
and one
seconds.
specific example, I apologize. May I have just a few seconds longer than this 13 seconds?
I can't, otherwise others will call me out on that.
I apologize. So really quick, a property might be 66 acres as a rural residential zoned property and be limited to 5,000 square feet on that particular accessory building, but then an ag zoned property might only have 15 acres and be allowed to have a 1 acre
That's time.
building coverage. So
Though others may have questions for you, so you may have more time to speak if others have questions for you. Let me go to Commissioner Fahey.
I think I was going to ask you the question you started to answer as your time was expiring, which is,
Thank you.
Director Holm asserted that the the resolution as proposed gets us to essentially to the same place as your proposed solution with the special use permit. So I think you were starting to answer why you don't think that's the case. If you would continue with that, that would be great.
I don't think that the special use permit gets to the same place. I think that the temporary use permit would allow the county to review each property on a case-by-case basis. A special use permit does allow for that to some extent, but the proposed regulations on the special use permit impose specific regulations on each type of zoned property. By way of example, and this is what I was answering, is that the ag zoned property proposed regulations allow for an accessory building up to 1 acre in building coverage. Generally speaking, the regulations say that ag-zoned properties must be approximately 80 acres. That's not the case in all of Douglas County. Some parcels are actually smaller than 80 acres. In fact, some of them are significantly smaller than 80 acres. So if you are going to say that you have an ag-zoned property that would allow for a building area of up to 1 acre, but you only have approximately 15 acres or 20 acres within that specific parcel, I'm sure that the county would come back and say, well, we don't have to allow up to 1 acre, but the proposed regulations by the county allow for that. And it seems to be that they're treating rural residential properties quite disparately with respect to ag-zoned properties. One of my clients specifically has a rural residential zoned property that's 40 to 60 acres. And he could certainly put a building on that property that could cover up to 1 acre and not really run a violation of like the rural residential zoned regulations that they're proposing, but they would only limit him to a 5,000 square foot building under their proposed regulations. It just might not conform to his proposed construction or contracting business. Like that would severely limit his ability to operate his construction or contracting business just because his particular equipment might not fit in that 5,000 square foot building. And just because he has a rural residential zoned property and not an ag property.
Ms. Ring, at the risk of both oversimplifying this and betraying my own ignorance, what would you say to the simple-minded county commissioner who would, in a situation such as this, generally prefer that we amend the code in a way that applies uniform rules to everybody as opposed to taking it on ourselves and burdening the county or whatever relevant government subdivision with a case-by-case determination, which always makes me nervous because I don't want to treat individual applicants disparately?
Sure. That's a great question. I would say that the county is actually putting themselves in an instance where they would have to consider it on a case-by-case basis anyway. And that has been acknowledged at the Planning Commission meetings, is that these particular applications, the special use permit applications, are of a nature where they do have to be considered on a case-by-case basis. So they would have to be presented in such a matter. By way of example, a special use permit usually has to have like specific information that's presented, and then the county usually has other supplemental questions, or maybe there's not enough information that's contained within their special use permit. So there's other supplemental information that's asked of the applicant after the application is already submitted. And I like that process. It makes a lot of sense. So I think that with respect to the 11 identified property owners, in comparison to the previously 60 identified illegal uses, it's a less cumbersome process.
Next time.
Thank you.
Let me go to Commissioner Borgerson.
Thank you. I guess along those lines, that's why I would prefer that we send this back for full discussion on that temporary use permit. And again, we're sitting here and we've got 4 minutes each, well, 6 minutes each, to talk about this when there were hours and hours and hours of testimony at a planning board meeting that we weren't all sitting there listening to. And so in order for me anyway, to make sure that we have done our due diligence and looked at an alternative that may or may not in the end work out, but seems to me is a good idea especially with changes that occur over time in our planning processes, that would be the better of the two. And if it's a easy fix, then I want to know that. If it's this long, drawn-out, blah, 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 then maybe we reconsider. But I think at this juncture, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe this alternative proposal, again, submitted by 3 different law firms collaboratively and cooperatively, got its due process in a hearing and a discussion and an open dialogue with our planning board members as to whether or not this was the better alternative than what we are proposing. And again, I'm not saying one's right or the other right now, other than it looks like a maybe 2-year window on a temporary permit would be a better fix than what we currently have, so that we can, again, make those changes or make those changes that we need to make in a more timely fashion. So again, I hope that if this public hearing is closed and there's motions, that we send this back, ask the planning board to have a public hearing on this alternative proposal, do its due diligence. I mean, again, you've got residents that took the time and energy and law firms that came together, which you don't normally have 3 of them coming together at the same time to us. And I just think it's better, it's a better way than just to rush this through our approval process on the recommendation of the planning board when this piece of the proposal was not given its due diligence or due process in conversation. So again, I completely understand those that want to, get this going, but I also think that we did not do justice to the residents or those representing them in hearing the alternative that could potentially be a better alternative for us. So.
Thank you. Let me go to Commissioner Friend for a third 2-minute round.
2 minutes, come on. Yeah. All right. Well, Commissioner Borgeson makes a good point, and there's not going to be. I don't like rushing things either. But here's the thing, and maybe Ms. Dring or maybe even Kent could weigh in on this after I pose it. My concern at this very moment, if we were actually going to move, if we weren't going to move something like this forward and we're going to kick it back to the Planning Commission, my concern is this: a temporary use permit, to my understanding right now, and I'd like to get Larry Jobin, I'd like to get Ms. Dring, I'd like to get all of these attorneys in line and grill them on this, but unfortunately, I only have this young lady here. Here's the thing: a temporary use permit, not a foul word, but bureaucrats and unelected officials writing rules about who qualifies for this exemption. That could be a little problematic to me. So in other words, I'm not saying that it wouldn't work. I'm saying that if we say, what Environmental Services and what the Planning Commission wants to do with the special use permit and the regulatory standards is not the way to go, the special use permit could be a way to go. If you do that, then again, not a foul word, but bureaucrats deciding who gets the temporary use permit and who doesn't is problematic to me. Because we're taking it out of the hands of, even though they're not fully defined, like I said, of the regulatory standards that are out there, we're taking those out of place that attorneys and anybody else could actually read, and we're creating a special use permit that's just like, here's a piece of paper, we're going to charge you $40, and guess what? The county makes a bunch of money on it. I'm a little concerned about that. Now, maybe Commissioner Borgeson's right. We kick it back to the Planning Commission, they're going to go, oh, wow. Now we've got to investigate a temporary use permit, and we got to wrap guidelines around it? All right. I'm done. Sorry, I didn't leave you any time to speak.
It's okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Friend. Let me take a round, and as we head towards potential conclusion of the public hearing, circle back to Kent and Laura if you had anything you wanted to share based on the discussion that's occurred.
Yes, Ken Holm, Environmental Services Director. The one thing, and just in reference to what Ms. Dring pointed out about non-conforming uses, a non-conforming use is defined very carefully and very eloquently in the regulations. Those non-conforming uses occur when a use is legal and then the governmental unit changes the regulations such that that use now becomes illegal, but they are quote unquote grandfathered in. And so I just wanted to clarify that we're not really talking about non-conforming uses right here. We're talking about uses that, in our estimation, for the most part, were not legal in the first place, because you have a rural residential district where you're not going to cite businesses there in the sense that they are operating today. So I just wanted some clarification on that. We have a number of non-conforming uses in the county, but what we're trying to do here is to get these particular businesses into a conforming status so that, one, it helps protect them, and secondly, it gives us a basis through the special use permit process to be able to enforce what's there. And we feel very comfortable with that mechanism. And again, because of what we did with the Planning Commission and this board with the special use process with the landscape companies, that's why we proceeded down this path. And we felt like that was very important for us to keep on that same path. So,
Thank you. I think there might be some more from the public, so go ahead.
Hello, my name is Clancy Peterson. I'm here on behalf of Brandon Walvard. To my knowledge, he is the one ag property that is an illegal non-conforming use. We're here in support of this resolution as written because it creates a path forward for Brandon here in this case, and to our estimation, the other rural residential users to be able to continue to operate their businesses in a legal manner with the guide rails that's set out by the city. I do want to provide a little background on how we got here, how Brandon got into his particular situation. He applied for a building permit in 2015. He was issued a building permit and there was no requirement that he disclose what his proposed use was. And so he built a 17,000 square foot building for his grading equipment to be stored in overnight. A handful of years ago, Mr. Forrest reached out with a letter saying, "Hi, Brandon, your use is now illegal." We had a little bit of back and forth at that point as to how Brandon could move forward and what was going to happen. And then most recently, we were informed that this process was being explored by the county commission so that we could get a special use permit and Brandon could continue to operate his construction business. Based on my review, I don't know that Brandon ever left anything out on his applications. I think that there was full disclosure. There just wasn't a requirement that the use or the intended use was disclosed at that time. And so I don't know that there's any ill will to create the illegal use or there was anything that was hidden. There was no hide the ball going on there. The special use permit, I think, is more appropriate than the temporary use permit because there's nothing temporary about a 17,000 square foot building or the operation of the business there. If this obstacle would have been known 10 years ago or 11 when he built the building and made the substantial investment in his property, perhaps he considers a different location. He doesn't build it adjacent to his house in the county as that. The other thing that I heard was the interaction. There was some question as to the interaction between the commission and the members that attended those meetings. I had a very good experience being able to come in, state my case. Brandon was the only ag property that it's being lumped in with this construction use. He unfortunate timing, he was lumped in with Valley Corps with that. So he was going to be the only one left out. If they just moved forward with rural residential, he was going to be the only one left out. He's going to be left trying to distinguish himself from Valley Corps. We brought that up at the meeting. The county commission rolled it over, and we were able to add the ag section, which Ms. Dring brought up. There was the acre, up to 1 acre of buildings that could be built there. Brendan, I think, has one more building, and he's the only property that's in ag, that's a construction business. It's been in operation. He's been there since 2015, but per the regulations, to my knowledge, and I believe to the knowledge of the board, is the only ag property. This isn't a blank check. There's not something else unknown out there. Then as to the other properties, I don't know what would prevent them from applying for a rezoning application. And if they want to develop their property or grow, if there's a 66-acre rural residential property, they can always plat that, and they can always rezone that. For these properties, I believe this is a fair, good path. It's limited. It's very, very limited to just those that are in existence. And I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you. That's time. And we'll take more from the public and circle back to see if there's any more from board as well.
Good morning. My name is Billy Hirschman. I live out at Waterloo, Nebraska. Danielle is representing me from Coley Jessen. I'm in favor of what she is proposing to the board, but I want to first off and say that I've lived out there for 12 years. I have 2 parcels that connect. It's a total of 12 acres. I'm in rural residential. I was not notified of 3 of the 4 board meetings, and my name was probably one of the top ones on the list from day one. I had a neighbor reach out to me in days before the 3rd meeting that I attended, and the 4th meeting, I got a letter in the mail. I got it in the mail the day before the meeting. I had to drop everything and attend that meeting the next night, not attend one of my kids' games, and go to that meeting. So the communication with the board and some of the public, and it's not just me, I've heard this from other people as well, but I am here to speak on my behalf. It is frustrating. I think there is ways to work together, but if there wouldn't be for people like us out in that community, I have my property. I pretty much just store some equipment and store some things out there for my roofing and construction business. I have an office in Valley that I have where my office is located, but I just pretty much use my acreage for storage of some equipment and some materials. But if it wouldn't have been for people like myself back when the flood happened and the tornadoes happened, I was one of the first ones on site. I brought dump trailers to site. I brought telehandlers, a skid loader. I saved people. I put on free roofs for people. They wrote articles about my business in the Fremont paper about what we did. If it wouldn't be for people like me who have a business or maybe have some equipment and some people, ways to help people, I brought some of my crews out to help people get out of the basements, pull their stuff out free of charge, haul it all away, excavate stuff like dirt to make water get away from their home and divert it, get people out of crawl spaces and tornadoes. We wouldn't be here. There'd be people lined up, to say what we've all done. But, it's just one of those things that if it wouldn't be for the small business owner in those areas, and it's going to happen again someday. You can't all live in town. You can't all have just a lawnmower. And, we do want to abide by the things they want us to do, the county. But at the same time, if we put some certain things in place, I think we can all get together. But to put too many restrictions on things isn't fair either, because I think it's going to cause more problems than it is. So I hope we can all work together, and I think Danielle and what Coley Jessen and the other firms have put together, I think is a great compromise, and I hope we can move forward with that. So,
thank you for being here. Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Rogers.
Yeah.
So you're in Commissioner Friend's instinctly framework that their regulation is too strong. The county's regulation is too strong.
I think it is. I think for what the attorneys have put together, I think for that that temporary use permit on people at the rural residential is a good option. I know Mary Ann. I know she proposed sending it back to the county. I'm not opposed to that, and maybe if they got to tweak some things, but some of the verbiage, it's just really tightly stricken for people like myself, like just with they, everything from fences to I mean, there's just, they mentioned about storage containers. I have a couple storage containers. It's the same thing as buying a storage shed at Lowe's. It's the same thing. I mean, I have a couple of those that we put our lawn equipment in and stuff like that we maintain our property. I think there's just a lot of restrictions on what the county has compared to what, the attorneys have put together for an option, so.
Thanks.
Thank you. Others from the public?
Hello, Earl Snyder, 26263 Dewey Avenue. Danielle also represents me. Exact same boat. I had no idea that they had even started this process last year until January when I got a letter a day before the meeting, or maybe 3 days before, saying, hey, that they're going to start looking at all your special use permit stuff. I'm in agreement with Coley Jessen. The temporary use is a better route to go. Like Billy said, the amount of restrictions they're trying to put with what we do. I run the same type of business Billy does. The restricting of what we can do and what we can't is just not fair for that area. We do not bring customers out there. This is purely to store equipment to get us out to the job site when we need it. The storage containers, they are. It's just a shed. If you want us to dress it up, put something like that out there, but they're not. I don't get why restricting what it can be if it's going to store something is a thing. So, again, Earl Snyder with Danielle.
Thank you for being here. Others from the public?
Hi, I'm Brad Meck, 1050 Campanile Road in Waterloo. And same thing with the special use permit that they're proposing. Some of the rules and regulations are too tight. They don't make sense. For one, the shipping containers, they say they're not allowed in Douglas County. But if you drive around Douglas County, there's hundreds of them. I drove around a 2-mile area in my property and I counted 26 containers. But they're telling me that I can't have my one for my kids to store their motorcycles and their four-wheelers in, which doesn't make any sense. And the other thing is the 50 by 50 area to park our equipment, you can't fit a truck and a trailer in a 50 by 50 area. So I think they're saying that temporary use permit makes more sense than the special use permit, because we could deal with that every couple of years and redo it. Their rules are just too tight for what we need out there for these construction businesses. They don't make any sense.
Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Thank you. Anybody else from the public that wanted to comment on this matter? If not, let me check the board, see if there's other lights. Commissioner Borgeson?
Thank you. Again, I mean, we're hearing from people for the very first time, and these are our residents. And while I appreciate all of the planning expertise that we have, I'm not trying to take anything away from that, but it's our duty to listen to our residents. And so I just think that I don't disagree, Kent and Laura, with our process on how we're doing this. Going back to the landscape thing, great. I'm okay with that. This one just has a little bit more than the landscaping did, and I think it would behoove us to do our due diligence as a county board and send it back, let them have their discussions, talk about the compromise proposal, let us see if that compromise proposal is indeed the better option than what is being proposed. We have to go in with open minds. We have to go in with being willing to listen to an alternative that is not on the table, and then let that process take its course, which would include making sure that the residents get notified and that the residents are able to speak at the planning board meeting, and then the follow-up to this board. So again, you know, I appreciate everybody coming, and I do appreciate the client who says this is going to be better for them. I appreciate that too. Which again was even more reason, in my opinion, for us to go back and really have more in-depth discussion than what this little short time here that we're getting in doing, because I don't believe that that alternative was given its due diligence, and I don't believe that the planning board allowed enough of public input, and that's what they're supposed to be there for before it gets here. That's what their job is. Their job is to listen to the residents and then bring a recommendation, and I don't think that was done as thoroughly and properly as it should have been. So when the time comes, I'm going to ask that this be sent back and that due diligence be done. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll do a quick round for a couple quick questions. Lauren, Kent, any comments regarding some of the issues brought up, like in regards to like storage units, kind of square footage of things, et cetera?
Just in terms of the storage unit aspect, yeah, we're aware that there are storage units around the county, and we are addressing some of those, and there will be, as we get through process, yeah, some of it is capacity issue and being able to address where we need to do that. But yeah, we would like to see that. A lot of this area out there is in floodplain, and when you have stuff that isn't bolted down, and you have something that happens like March 9th in 2019, you get stuff that just floats away. And so that's part of the concern there. In terms of the square footage thing, I think that's been an issue that has been kind of bantered back and forth since I think I got to the department. There's been a lot of discussion about, you know, should we limit the size of accessory buildings and so on. What we've seen and what Laura alluded to is the fact that we get folks that build storage buildings and they tell us, yes, I want this to store my stuff. And then, oh, a few years later, we get a complaint about, hey, so-and-so is running a business. And so that's why, as part of the proposal here, we're looking at that non-disclosure type agreement. In terms of the size of those buildings, I think that's, you know, there are a lot of different sized properties out there. There are a number of properties that range all the way from less than an acre all the way up to almost 20 acres in the rural residential district. And there are properties that are zoned ag that are generally above 20 acres. If there may be some rare exceptions where there's an ag property that's less than 20 acres, but most of them are greater than 20 acres. So to be able to get a number there, I mean, sometimes we've gone with percentages, but we felt like a 1 acre total size, that's 43,560 square feet, pretty good amount of building there. Yeah, we're trying to maintain some of the character of rural residential too. I mean, when you're talking about some small properties, if you start allowing huge, now you've got an accessory building that's essentially taking up a huge amount of a particular footprint of a lot per se. So I would say it's a balancing act. I don't think we're going to be perfect with this, but there's also potentially, you know, through the special use permit process, that allows you to look at individual properties and maybe make some adjustments with that size. So that was kind of a wishy-washy answer, but I mean,
appreciate it.
That's where with planning and zoning, absolute black and white sometimes is tough to come by because of previous use things.
Yep, thank you, appreciate it. Let me go to Commissioner Rogers.
Thank Ken, let me ask you. So the issue is, I'm trying to decipher. The issue is not the size. The issue is finding some way to curtail this piece from becoming a business that it was not. Because at least how I'm understanding it, you know, if I go out to the rural communities I've been to, and it's some houses are smaller than the buildings that they use for the equipment. I mean, that's like the standard. It's like, I mean, so I'm trying to get at, really the core thing is finding out some way not to let a business get started that's really supposed to be storing machinery. That's the core thing.
Correct, and that's why that particular language is being proposed in one section, that going forward, when someone came in for an accessory building permit, that we have that non-disclosure that, hey, you're going to use it for your own personal storage. It's not going to be used for business. And if it is going to be used for business, we want to know that so that we can make sure that that is legal from the get-go.
Okay, can one of you all then come up and, I just want to make sure I'm right in this, can one of you all come up and, you're good with the, I guess, well, I put it like this, don't let it be said that showing up doesn't count, because I was in a whole nother mindset till people showed up. I'm inclined to support sending this back to committee now, just because I do have some, I want to find a way to work out the concern with a business starting, but I'm just saying this thing of size, there's not a rural community I haven't went to where I haven't seen a storage unit bigger than a house. Few. And so I'm trying to figure out how this size thing is really a matter.
Okay, so
And I'm trying to figure out where the department was the size thing, and if we just need to send it back and let it get worked out, because I do have some sympathy for this regulation argument that they're making.
okay. I'm not sure I'm 100% the right person to weigh in exactly on the size thing with respect to the department's position on it, but I can tell you with respect to the way that I read the regulation and how, from a legal perspective, argument I would make with respect to that regulation. I can also tell you, I want to make sure that I'm answering Kent's position as well. The clients that I've worked with and the clients that I'm here to represent today do not have an issue with the non-conversion requirements. So as part of the temporary use permit application process that we're proposing, we would make that representation that the buildings that our clients have on the property and are using on the property are not being converted for some other use other than what was disclosed to the department and what is being used or has been used historically prior to January 1st of 2026 for the construction and or contracting use that our client had in existence prior to January 1st, 2026. So that particular piece would still be consistent, internally consistent with the spirit of what was proposed by the department. With respect to the size of the building, my clients have varying size parcels. Miss Billy from H&H Exteriors was up here saying that he has 2 adjacent parcels comprised of approximately 12 acres total. One of my clients has 1 parcel zoned rural residential that consists of approximately 44 acres or so. But again, both of them are zoned rural residential and would be subject to that 5,000 square foot limitation. So there's a little bit of a disparate treatment.
Mr. Rogers, did you want a third 2-minute round?
No, I'll just say I'm like I said, half the battle is showing up. So you showed up, and I'm implied to not rush this because I just feel like there's sympathy for this regulation argument, and to make this call now, I feel like there needs to probably be a little more thought into it. So if it gets to that point, I'll support sending it back to give some time to work on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Borgson, you did have a third round already, but did you have a quick point of clarification?
Before I go, did you want to speak? I want to before my 2 minutes.
As to the size, if you were asking generally, that is one of those things that everybody's going to have a different use for this. And for who I represent, he has one other building that he'd like to get built just across from where his other one is. It's not near as big. He'd like to get it done this summer, if at all possible. And to our knowledge, we can't get a valid building permit until this is approved, until we have a path forward. So while sending it back and maybe massaging the language it sounds great, it also is throwing some ice on some other projects too. Moving forward, maybe is there a way where we can approve it with an ask to amend it, and look at that case by case later? Because we're talking rural residential, that's where the concern is. I haven't heard a lot of concern about the ag portion of it, and I don't know which portions of this text amendment you could potentially approve or ask for revisions on, but I understand the size. Size should be scalable. That makes sense to me, and if it's not in there and it needs to be updated, I guess we can be patient.
Anybody else before we close the public hearing?
So I guess the balancing act, again, as we're talking about the planning aspects of it, there's also a balancing act of infringing upon property rights. And so I think, again, they have time to call a meeting to discuss this and get it through the proper processes. And so everybody has valid points, good points. I'm not trying to take anything away from anybody. I'm just trying to get to a point where we, again, have an alternative that needs to be looked at in much more detail than what it was given, and residents to be heard much more openly than what they've been given the chance to be. So that's it.
Thank you. Anybody else, board or public, before we close the public hearing? If not, the public hearing is now closed for item B. What is the will of the board?
I would make a motion that we send it back to the planning board for consideration and discussion on the alternative and more thorough public input.
Motion made by Borgeson. Second by Rogers. And we can vote.
Give me one moment, please. Okay, thank you, commissioners.
I'm sorry, this resolution is...
The motion was made by Commissioner Borgeson to send this item back to the Planning Commission for further review. Motion passes 5-2. Commissioners Kavanaugh and Friend voting no, all other commissioners voting yes.
Thank you. That concludes the public hearing for item B and the action taken. We'll move forward on our agenda to Section 8, committees. Under Finance, we have our budget report and our monthly fee report as presented. We also have under Human Resources our weekly personnel reports from Civil Service, also as presented. We do have a need for executive session today for the purposes of contract negotiation, legal advice, and labor negotiations. Do you have a motion and second for executive session? Motion by Morgan, second by Rogers. Question?
Yes, at 1:30, there will be a hearing of the Community Services Committee in room 903 regarding the Visitor Improvement Fund grant application and procedure. For this year, we have $7 million to distribute.
Thank you. All right, we do have a motion and a second for executive session. We'll take a vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. The board will now go into executive session for the purposes of contract negotiation, legal advice, and labor negotiation.
wanted to give you a heads up.
Motion by Commissioner Borgeson to reconvene and adjourn, second by Commissioner Fahey. Motion passes 7-0. We're adjourned at 11:22 a.m.